Hello, and today we'll be playing the newest update of Temptation's Ballad. This update has 15,000 words, so this should be a very lengthy update. Probably like around an hour and a half, maybe more than that, but certainly a lot should happen in this new update, so we're going to get ahead and start now. As the world disappeared around them in a flash of white mist, the muffled explosion of the front gates erupted in flames echoed in their ears. Yeah, I gotta save here. Hold on, sex is not yet complete. Please continue in a future update. Yeah, I'm just wondering about that, that's all. So the only option right now is to go to the laboratory, second floor, research hallway. I'm just wondering what this was said. I figured that. But anyway, let's go this option here. This is the only one. Fourteenth laboratory, second floor, research hall. Oh, a bright flash of mist caught Cassius tumbled out of the air and onto the hard stone floor like screaming sacks of potatoes. Cole winced and wobbled onto his feet while the prince curled up in a corner, gingerly nursing his ear. Where were they? Somewhere inside the laboratory? The prince cast scatter. He must have teleported them all inside in a panic. Ow. I think I'm bruised. I've never been bruised before. What do I do? Oh, walk off, you big baby. Have you ever gotten into any scraps as a kid? Cassius pressed his palm against his knee and sheepishly avoided Cole's unimpressed stare. I wouldn't know. I've never been a kid. Cole glared at the prince incredulously. He knew nobles were a bunch of repressed pansies, but this was a bit much. The hyena sighed, searching around the wrecked room. He plucked up the cleanest intact glass bottle he could find. Magic sparked off his fingertips as he gave it a quick polish against his waistcloth. Prestidigitation. The bottle instantly grew chill to the touch. Cole gave it a quick twirl before squatting down and pressing the improvised cold pack against the prince's ugly purple bruise. Hold it there for a while. It'll stop hurting after a few minutes. Or days, or years, or maybe it's terminal. Congrats on your first bruise. Ain't this exciting? I'm no doctor or anything, but I just watched you rub this all over your loincloth. Prestidigitation cleans things too. Prince Cassius sniffed. Not very well, apparently. Good gods, Papa was right. Wizards really are the whiniest wimps in existence. Excuse you, I just saved you from a fiery death. I think I'm allowed to whine a tiny bit. As the prince nursed his knee, Cole took in their new surroundings with a frown. It looked like they were in one of the hallways on the second floor. The ceiling on the far end had collapsed, revealing the gray, overcast skies above. The air buzzed against his ears with an eerie ring, a telltale sign of long abandoned magic. If you wanted to keep us out of your lab, why did you teleport us here? I panicked. I'm not really used to casting my magic yet. Bullshit. You've been tossing out high-level spells like candy all day. I'm not lying. The prince's eyes wandered the cold, sterile walls of the laboratory. A look of bittersweet nostalgia fell across his face. But I suppose my mind wandered as I thought about this place. And there was something I wanted to speak to you about, privately. Cole stiffened as he glanced around, his eyes flashing with arcane light. Where did you throw everyone else? They're safe, I think. They're all somewhere else in the lab. I just wanted a few moments alone with you. I have some questions. All right. We're alone. Ask. Cassius' feathers ruffled nervously. His eyes darted everywhere in the room by the hyena, his hands clutching the bottle against his knee in a tight grip. Finally, the prince looked up and gestured around them. Do you recognize this place? This is one of the things that makes us different, you know. We have a general awareness of our surroundings even before we were made. Cole stared. Made. Cassius turned toward the hyena, his face unreadable. This is what I wanted to speak to you about. Tell me, what were you made for? Cole's fur stood on end. He scanned his surroundings. The broken lab equipment littering the floor, the destroyed walls opening up to the foggy sky above. There was an eerie sense of familiarity he couldn't quite shake. Cole's eyes wandered to the door at the end of the hallway, and his shoulders reflexively tensed. When you say made, come now, Colored Eye. You're no fool. I'm certain you put the pieces together by now. Cole swallowed, his throat uncomfortably tight. He wanted to snap and say no. He had no idea what the prince was implying. But he'd be stupid to ignore all the signs. Back in the entrance of the lab, the peacock pestered him about his parentage and how he was connected to Agatha Stoker. And yesterday, the enchanter mentioned how one of his fathers broke into her lab 23 years ago. Yes, Ashley. All the times Papa chuckled. Thank the gods you got Hamish's brains and avoided missing Cole's mother like the plague. Or any of his family at all. And Cole's own fur patterns that were suspiciously dark for a striped hyena. The bard reached up and gently traced the little black spot underneath his left eye, the one that perfectly mirrored Hamish's own. The truth was clear as day if Cole dwelled on it for even a moment, but instead he glared at the prince and snapped. I have no idea what you're prattling on about. The prince sighed. I suppose words are useless at this point. Rather to show you. He gestured for Cole to follow before walking towards a room down the hall. Stoker homunculi specimen 1, specimen 2. The door led to another sterile, white room. Inside was a singular, empty display case, its glass cracked as though someone punched a hole through the back to grab whatever was inside. Embedded into the display case plaque were the words Stoker homunculi specimen 1 and Stoker homunculi specimen 2. Cole's reflection still back at him through the glass casing, his chest twisting uncomfortably. What was inside this? Arcane crystals, 2 of them, that contained a heavily modified version of the spell. Great homunculus. Regular homunculi are intrinsically tied to their creator and are entirely dependent on them. If their creator dies, the homunculus dies as well, and they do not grow nor change. These 2, though, they're different. Enchanter Stoker toiled for decades to make them a reality. a homunculus created from blood of two donors entirely independent of thought and being. They are children who grow and learn and live. In all the ways that matter, they are the flesh and blood offspring of their parents. One day, 23 years ago, someone broke into the facility and stole one of the crystals. The researchers never tracked down who it was, though I had a sneaking suspicion that enchanter Agatha knew. Why she never attempted to retrieve it, I'll never know. Cassius peered at Cole curiously. You were the prototype, the first? I suppose there were some issues that needed ironing out. Perhaps that was why your body is so small and undeveloped compared to your father's. Fathers, plural. Cole's inside squirmed with tiny needles of guilt. The years he spent giving Hamish hell for not being good enough for Papa rose in his mind. The countless outbursts of frustration he hurled upon the other hyena when Cole couldn't measure up to Papa's legend. He was the son of Mama Bonebreaker, and Hamish was just a convenient target for his insecurities. And yet, there he was, his actual father. Not that it really mattered. Blood relation or not, Hamish treated Cole with more patience than he deserved. And all these years he just threw it back into his face. Good gods, he was pathetic. The prince watched him carefully, as though trying to pick apart his reaction for some hint of answers. Does the truth trouble you so? I'm not exactly jumping for joy, no. Are you upset because you did not fulfill your purpose? Cole glanced at the prince wearily. Most people don't make kids with some great big plan in mind. Sometimes they just kind of happen. Why does this matter so much to you? I did not just happen, and clearly neither did you. There's been a lot on my mind. You're the only one who might have some semblance of an answer. So I must ask, what are you made for? I have to know. Cole exhaled sharply as he ran a frustrated claw through his hair. Doesn't really matter. My dads, they're big stupid idiots. They're madly in love and they wanted to have a child. And then they ended up with the world's most disappointing son. Maybe I popped out of some magic doohickey instead of a womb, but the reasoning still stands. Life just happens sometimes. There isn't some grand scheme behind it. Cassius found an untethered fear etching across his face like cracks across glass. I don't understand how he can live like this without knowing what to do, without reason, easily and disappointingly. If you wanted to know why, you're better off asking Papa and Hamish instead of me. And just a consequence. Cassius saw him a wistful smile. From the moment I came into being, my purpose was etched into my mind. It was the one thing I knew with utmost certainty, and yet, he choked out a bitter laugh. Well, I suppose I failed immediately. I too became a great disappointment. The prince sought Cole a humorless smile. But if you are correct, and sometimes life just happens, then I must ask, how does one continue living when they know they failed? Thus, I brought you here. A bargain of such. Cassius swallowed tightly before hesitantly reaching out to Cole with an open palm. As I mentioned before, we were born different. We have a subconscious awareness around us even before we were born. I would like to peer into your mind and find an answer to my question. Cole recoiled sharply. Before he can retort, the prince hastily continued. Mind reading is often a two-way street. You came to this facility to uncover the truth behind the royal family, did you not? In a technical sense, I am the caster behind the anti-mimetic spell enshrouding this mystery. Anything you learn from me will be retained, regardless of any secret-keeping magic. And that's my proposal. Allow me to read your mind, and you are free to probe mine for answers as well. Cole bit his cheek, his thoughts racing wildly. They were in dire need of information, and there truly was no better source than the man himself. But to expose himself like this was reckless, foolish, and yet a small part of him also yearned for the truth. He needed to find answers behind this whole royal family rabbit hole. Pardon me, he lied to himself half-heartedly. All right, I agree to your bargain, but you'll only search my brain for your answer, and no further. Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong. Got it? Prince Cassius nodded solemnly. Yeah, my word. The prince's outstretched hand hung in the air. Cole stared at it hesitantly for several long moments before exhaling sharply. He reached out and grasped it in a firm handshake. The air crackled with a surge of arcane light, and everything went white. Cole felt his mind open like the blossoms of an unending flower. Each petal unfolded to reveal a prior moment of his life, flickering further and further back until the sights and sounds became unrecognizable. Cole felt the prince's gaze behind his eyes, peering deeper into his past for the answers they both craved. And then there was nothing, no sight, no sound, just a vast expanse of blackness. But there was a sense of a sense of self, and a vague awareness of the world around him. Cole was still, crystalline and unmoving. He sat behind a glass display, cased in a gray, sterile lab. Voices of researchers and enchanters flickered past his perception, whispering words he couldn't quite catch. And here he sat for what felt like days, months, years, maybe. Cole could feel time ticking past in his limited existence as he waited. But what was he waiting for? Then a sudden crack of shattering glass filled his senses. Cole felt Allard's warm hand seize his entire being and pull him from his glass prison. There was loud swearing, blaring alarms, and a panicked pattering of fleeing feet. Someone clutched him close to their chest as they ran. Cole could feel their heart race with a strange mix of excitement, apprehension, and fear. After what felt like forever, the running slowed to a halt. This person's unease did not fade as they approached their destination with Cole's arcane crystal in hand. There was the sound of a creaking door and then hushed voices. Shh. Hamish. Hammy. Hamster. You up? I've been meaning to talk to you about something. What? What time is it? If you woke me up at the dead of night to randomly say, I love you again, I swear to the gods. No, Hamish, this is a serious discussion. You said the same thing last week when this blasted tavern ran out of ale. I told you, Hammy, it's a guild building. I got all the permits and everything. We've even got a front sign now. We still get strangers strolling and asking for a pint. We could just throw one of the boys at the front door to gatekeep the place. Like a bouncer at a tavern. I keep telling you, it's a bumburger mercenary guild. It says so on our taxes. What taxes? There was a rustle, as though Marrow was shaking his head furiously. No, Hamish. I'm being serious. I need to talk to you. About us. The bed creaked as Hamish quietly sat up. The room was silent. The two men exchanged wordless looks, their expressions like an open book to the other. About us. The spotted hyena repeated the words in his best calm and stern voice. But this Hamish was younger, less practiced. The edge of fear bled through the crack in his voice. It was about the guild company. I managed to get all the paperwork sorted out. We've been getting more recruits by the day and our reputation's been growing. Oh no, that's not why. Your family then? I know I said that we should never go back to that blasted manor, but if you really wanted to visit your sister, then Hamish. The bed creaked once more as Marrow sat down next to his partner. The Lord's Highness held Hamish's hand in a comforting squeeze before pressing a firm kiss to his knuckles. Hamish, Hammy, hamster. I'm not like hamster. Love of my life, moon of my skies, the most beautiful man in the world. Don't start again. Marrow chuckled finally at his expression's exasperated tone. Hamish did his best to sound unimpressed, with a smile tugged at his lips and the fear melted away into a tiny sliver. The tiny sliver, but still ever present. Hamish squeezed his hand tightly, fearing the moment he finally let go. Hamish inhaled and weighed his words carefully. I want to talk about us, about how much I still love you, and how I want to spend the rest of my life growing old with you. But Marrow shook his head firmly. No buts. I wouldn't be the man I am today if it weren't for you. Hell, I probably wouldn't even be alive. I was a miserable and spoiled little lordling, rotted away in that hell house until you swooped in and saved me. Marrow's voice was warm and fond. My knight in shining armor, my Hamish. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I thank the gods every day that you fell into my life. You said earlier that you didn't wake me up to randomly say I love you again. A serious discussion, you said. Marrow's lips tightened as he braced himself. You're afraid. I'm not. I'm afraid. Hamish looked up sharply. Marrow continued. Things have moved so quickly in the last few years. When I first met you, you were in a lonely, miserable place. And I was still trapped in that hell house, still trying to shake off all the hooks my father had me. Marrow flashed him a soft smile. And now, here we are, just a few years after we fell into each other's lives. We're free, but still afraid. We're not afraid. But you are. I can see it in your eyes. We were both lonely and desperate when we first met. Now, we are neither. And every day I look into your eyes and see you bracing for the day I finally leave for greener pastures. A bittersweet chuckle escaped Marrow's throat. Meanwhile, every day I woke up with you at my side, wondering what I ever did to deserve you. The most patient and caring man in the world. And I'm afraid, how can such a wonderful man ever love a miserable whelp like me if he isn't desperate and lonely? Marrow, the Lord's Highness, pressed another firm kiss to his hand, his gaze fixed firmly on Hamish with a warm, loving smile. I wanted to talk about us because I need you to know that I love you. Not because I'm desperate or lonely or afraid, but because you're the man I chose to spend the rest of my life with, if you'll have me. There was a long pause and then a quiet sniffle. You are the sappiest, most overdramatic man I've ever met. Is that a yes? Obviously, you big oaf. Marrow smiled softly as he pulled his lover close in a warm embrace. They held each other for the longest minutes of their lives as they felt the other's heartbeat thumping through their chests. You're still afraid. Yeah, me too. It's not that I believe you, I really do. With all my heart, but you can't just wash away fear with pretty words. I know. I didn't expect to instantly fix everything with a few pretty words. But there's something else. Cole felt his father's grip around his crystalline form tighten as he was lifted upward. What's this? An arcane crystal? I thought you swore off having anything to do with magic. Well, yeah, but this is different. This is for us. It's a crystal doohickey that I stole from one of my sister's research colleagues. It's supposed to allow any two people to have a child together. Hamish let out a splutter of disbelief. A child? Yeah, even us. You just give the crystal a bit of blood from both parents, and it'll create a baby from it. But without needing to sit in the oven for like 9 months. Are you serious? Marrow, you just talked about how quickly we're moving, and then you suggest we have a kid? Do, do you not want to? There was a slight crack in the older hyena's voice. Hamish hesitated. Of course I do, but like this? People start families when they feel ready. I don't want to have a kid just because we're not, just because we're, just because we're both insecure about ourselves. We can't lean on a little child to fix our own faults. We won't be. Here we are, two loving people vowing to share our lives together. And what better way to commemorate that beyond words than having a baby together? Are you hearing yourself? This won't be just about us anymore. We need to raise this kid right, and the two of us know fuck all about being good parents. I, for one, think you'll be a wonderful dad. The kid will love you. You'll pass on that massive knowledge of yours, and I'll teach him how to become the greatest warrior in the land. Excitement filled Marrow's voice as he prattled on and on. Can you imagine it? The Bonebreaker Guild, led by our glorious little family. Bonebreaker and his beloved Hamish, with our brilliant child at our side. People are gonna be talking about us for years. Hamish. Marrow. I can't imagine the horror on my old man's face when he hears his least favorite child living his best life. Marrow, what do you think our child will be like? Probably squirrely and quick on his feet, like his dad's. We'll probably have to child-proof the entire guild for a few years to keep all the weapons away from the miracle or sanity. Marrow froze. Hamish was quiet as he gently plucked the crystal out of his hands and cradled it gently in his palms. Is this because your father always said you're a stain on the family? Is that what this is all for, to prove him wrong? But what? No, this is for us, Hamish. I want this for us. Marrow's voice rose unconvincingly. This has nothing to do with them. We're better than where we came from, and I know for a fact we'd be great parents. We could be a family. Marrow reached out and cupped Hamish's hands in his own. The younger hyena didn't meet his gaze. Marrow swallowed hard. If you think it's too soon or don't want to do it at all, we don't have to. I just wanted you to know that I'm here to stay, that's all. This is for us. Let's do it. I agree, let's do it. Hamish nodded, his voice as firm as he could muster. But there it was again, the fear, staining his tone and lingering in the back of his eyes like a malignant parasite. Marrow could see it as clear as day and felt his heart bleed with shame. If he were a better man, he could step away at that very moment. Call her off, take more time to consider. But that traitorous voice in the back of his mind muttered, wouldn't that make it worse? Wouldn't stepping away feed into Hamish's fear even more? And this was his proclamation of love, his promise to stay. This was for us. And so, in that moment of weakness, Miracle and Sanderson nodded and agreed. Later that afternoon in the bedroom of the Bonebreaker Guild, two hyenas nervously dripped their blood onto the stolen arcane crystal. The crimson mixed together, soaking through the crystalline form as magic, decades in the making, was set into motion. In a flash of arcane radiance flooded the room, blinding the two hyenas as threads of light and flash wove together around the crystal like a tapestry of life. Cole was suddenly aware. His eyes were still shut, his ears twitching at unfamiliar sounds. His skin felt warm against the warm blanket beneath him. Soon the light faded. In its place was a tiny, crying infant shivering on the bedroom table. Cole's first true sensation was his father's warm, trembling hands carefully wrapping around his delicate body and lifting him up. "Oh, Hammy, he's got your little eye spot." Cole blinked, and a small gurgle escaped his grubby mouth. The faces looking back at him broke out into tender laughs. Hamish reached out and gently held Cole's little paw between his fingers. He smiled and cooed quietly at his newborn son. "Precious little guy, isn't he? Hey, buddy, this is your dad, Marrow. Can you see him?" Cole's crying has faded, replaced with soft giggles as he leaned into the warm embrace of his father's hands. Marrow's expression melted into a puddle of wistful joy. Hey there, little fella. Little Cole, I'm your dad." Marrow repeated the words as though not truly believing them. "Ha, I'm your dad." His one good eye blinked away tears as he took in the sight of his son. This new life, this untarnished innocence he his beloved brought into the world, now giggling happily in his hands. The hyena's grip tightened around the newborn child as though frightened of letting go. Marrow glanced towards Hamish, who was too enraptured by Cole's little hiccups to notice his apprehension. The man who vowed to stay with him for the rest of his days, the man who agreed to raise a child with him despite everything. The joy his heart trembled, marred by the stain of shame and fear. Marrow was an idiot. All the pride and ego that had brought him to this season twisted inside his gut like an angry knot. What was he thinking, insisting on having a child in such haste despite Hamish's pleadings, rambling about what he wanted his son to be before he was even born, and pulling on that thread of fear in Hamish's hard to convince him. Marrow could feel his father's hooks tear painfully against his insides as he wanted to retch. He glanced at the smiling face of his son. Fear and realization seeped across his every inch of the older hyena's skin like ice. Marrow was going to ruin him. He was going to ruin his son, just like everything else. He bit his cheek and inhaled sharply. No, falling apart wouldn't help anyone. Now was not the time for regrets. He was a father now. This wasn't just about him anymore. Marrow Bonebreaker shoved his fear aside and stared up at the little bundle of joy in his hands. His face softened into a determined smile. "My son, my darling boy. You're going to grow up to be the happiest little nugget in the world. I'm going to do everything in my power to become the dad you deserve. This I promise to you, my little quality Bonebreaker." Many years had passed since Cole's father spoke that vow. In the years that followed, the Bonebreaker Guild became an official mercenary company. The name Marrow Bonebreaker became known across the land as the greatest warrior in Axia. His heart, as big as his axe, was sharp. The little bundle of joy in his father's hands quickly grew into a scrawny young hyena. Little Cole inherited his father's toothy, prideful grin and Hamish's sharp, calculating eyes. Every day he was soured in his father's loving embrace and supportive words, and he yearned to one day repay that kindness. Cole quietly made a vow of his own. He would become a son worthy of the great Marrow Bonebreaker. It was the very least he could do. Then came the day when an injured young Cole was ushered to the healer's wing. The day where Cole was told of his decrepit body and how he would never become the warrior he vowed to be. The day where Cole hurled his unbridled rage and frustrations upon an undeserving Hamish. And it was on that day that his father found him hidden away in a dark corner of the training room, sobbing and saying, "There you are. Hamish told me what happened. You doing okay, son?" Cole sniffled as he struggled to wipe away the tears soaked across his face. "Oh, wait. I'm afraid I can't do that. Not until I know you're okay." "Not happening. Didn't you hear? I'm never gonna be okay." "Then I guess I'll just have to stick to by your side forever, huh?" His father chuckled quietly as he sat down with him on the cold wooden floor. "So, what's got you so worked up? Don't ask stupid questions. My life is over. You got a long and prosperous life ahead of you, if I have anything to say about it." "Come now. Being a fighter isn't everything. Don't pretend it's nothing. What's everyone going to think when they find out the son of Maul Bonebreaker is a tiny little runt who can't even swing an axe? You think I give a damn about what anyone else thinks? You're still my son, my darling." Through the mess of sniffles and tears, Cole suddenly felt his father's hand gently pat him on the head. He felt the warmth through his hair as Morrow patted soothing circles into his scalp. He sniffed. The anger in his chest lowered him. The anger in his chest lowered still as he leaned into his father's touch. Morrow hummed, his voice low and reassuring. "There, there, lad. Everything's going to be all right. You don't have to be a warrior to please me, Cole, or need to please me at all. I'm just happy to be part of your life. You don't have to lie to make me feel better." "Ha! Do I seem like the kind of guy to mince words?" "No." His father grinned and ruffled his hair playfully. "I'm looking forward to meeting the man you'll become, whoever that may be. You're my son, but that doesn't mean you need to be just like me. That's what makes life exciting, don't you think?" Cole sniffed. "I guess. Nothing makes me prouder than seeing you happy, my boy. As long as you manage to find joy in life, you'll have the happiest dad in the world. I hope you know that." Cole wiped away his tears and sighed into his father's comforting touch. "I do." He tried to sound sincere, but the sting of fear persisted through the edge of his voice. Fear couldn't be washed away with a few pretty words after all. But as Cole sat there with his father gently patting his head and whispering comforting words in his ear, he almost believed that everything was indeed right. Cole let out a sharp exhale as he pulled his consciousness out of the sea of memories. That was enough. That was too much. He could feel the prince's presence at his side, watching everything with horrified intrigue. Bile rose in his throat as he tried to push the mess of emotions out of his head. "You've had your fill. It's time for you to pay your end of the bargain." Cole reached out towards the threads of magic tethering the minds together and ceased. He felt himself tumble forward as he dipped headfirst into another deep, cold sea of memories. In the beginning there was nothing, just a timeless sea of black, and within that vast ocean was a faint spark of awareness. There were people shuffling around him, researchers or enchanters, perhaps. He didn't know what those words meant at the time, but he felt their sharp stabs of magic within his crystalline form as they poked and prodded at him. They wanted something from him, he realized. They wanted to change him somehow. He wasn't sure why, but he hoped they found what they were looking for soon. Even as a simple crystal sitting on a pedestal, he felt his inner self painfully with every minute adjustment. Day after day, he felt himself twist and change a little more. Everything began to feel colder, emptier. Along with the numbness came a flood of raw power. Magic swelled up in his core like rushing waves from a downpour of rain. filling him up so quickly that he felt like he might burst. Was this what he was supposed to feel? What was he what he was supposed to be? It was uncomfortable to say the least. Whatever these people wanted from him, he wasn't sure he was doing a good job. After what felt like an eternity in the timeless dark, he felt something. He felt someone pluck his crystalline body out of his glass casing. Something was happening, he realized. Everything that he experienced led up to this point. He hoped he didn't disappoint. Cold, feathered figures held him in the palm of their hands in cold regard. Suddenly he felt the crimson metallic tang of blood drip onto him, slowly seeping into his very being. His senses exploded to life as arcane radiance blared into the room. Light and flesh twisted around themselves like the gnarled roots of a tree growing outwards from its core to form the beginnings of a torso, and then limbs, and then finally a head. Everything began to feel louder. He felt the cold touch of the laboratory floor clack against his taloned feet as he stood still, his eyes sealed shut. There was a faint, citric scent of magic as soft garments sprung to life, wrapping themselves around his naked body. A newly formed heart pounded apprehensively in his chest as he instinctively held his breath. Was he supposed to do something now? Should he move or ask a question? He had vocal cords now, he realized. He was certain he could speak if he wanted to. All that prodding from the researchers had filled his mind with strange things. The workings of this city called Axia, the history of its royal family. He wondered what he was supposed to do with such knowledge. Then he froze. His heart skipped a beat as he realized whoever removed him from his glass case was standing right in front of him. Open your eyes. The voice was low and whisper soft, but it carried a dangerous, sharp edge that he didn't dare cross. His eyelids felt heavy as he attempted to pry them open and meet his maker. The first thing he noticed was a pair of sharp amber eyes peering back as the glowering face of Roderick Diluvium regarded him coldly. The royal peacock circled around him, and in silence, taking in every detail of his being with a measured look. He gulped and fought the urge to step away from the glaring man. Their flesh appears to be adequate. The older man mumbled to himself as he grabbed his new creation by the chin and lifted his head to observe him more closely. You will answer when spoken to. How do you feel? Any pain or faults to be addressed? I'm functional, sir. A dull and monotone voice spilled out of his throat before he could think. The dark peacock nodded and released his chin. Agatha did fine work. My adjustment seemed to have taken hold without issue. Tell me, what is your name? The knowledge sprung forth immediately in his mind. You are King Roderick Diluvium of the city of Axia. And what is the city of Axia? The capital of the Mediatus kingdom, located at the base of Mount Zenithar, claimed by its locals to be the center of the world. It is famed as a research hub of Arcano tech and for its export of arcane crystals mined from the mountain. Good. And what is your purpose? He paused as an unearned knowledge swirled within his skull. I am the vessel. I am to introduce myself to the people as your son. I am next in line to the Axian throne after your majesty and Queen Tabitha Diluvium passed away. He felt as the dark peacock nodded in quiet approval and felt a flicker of pride in his chest. At least he was doing something correctly. The dark peacock muttered quietly to himself as he sorted through his thoughts. A little stiff, but performs competently enough. Is to be ready to make sparse public appearances after preparations are made. Sir, may I ask a question? Roderick glared at him sharply. An empty vessel should not ask questions. He gulped. There is a gap in my knowledge, sir. The king gazed at him carefully before nodding. Ask a question. What is my name? The king frowned. Your knowledge implantation did not include this. It must have slipped my mind. Roderick stepped close, brushing his fingers across his new creation's cheek with a glimmer of pride and hope in his eyes. You are something extraordinary, something new, unlike anything else in this rotted and finite earth. For the first time, Roderick Delirium smiled. You are Cassius, the ark upon which we will sail into the new world. There was a strange sense of fulfillment burning in Cassius' chest, mixed with a creeping dread. On the day of his birth, he was given a name and a purpose. He was a vessel. He would carry out King Roderick's wishes after he died. It was a long and complicated scheme, but he only needed to follow a few simple instructions before the reins were taken from him. It was simple enough. Cassius was content with the life he was given, but therein lied the dreaded suspicion that something had gone terribly wrong. He was a vessel, the empty vessel. An empty vessel shouldn't have a sense of fulfillment, should it? Or be nervous about the task at hand, or feel this desperate yearning for approval from his maker. Had he failed already? Should he tell King Roderick about this? The frightening apprehension gnawed through Cassius' chest, but he swallowed it down with a stubborn gulp. No, an empty vessel wouldn't confess to having concerns, would it? Perhaps he wasn't perfectly empty, but he could try. This was the purpose he was given, and he intended to follow through. And so, when King Roderick and his researchers locked him inside a new glass case for safekeeping, Cassius kept his mouth shut. He willed the traitorous thoughts out of his head as he was wheeled into a warded storage room for safekeeping. He would do his best to be empty. It was what he was made to be. Cassius forced himself to stay stone still. He did not emote as the storage room doors slammed shut and a protection spell sprang to life. He didn't utter a word as he heard the muffled voice of his maker address his researchers through the thick concrete. And so, the project is finally complete. Thank you for all your hard work. You are now relieved from your duties. Cassius didn't make a sound as screams rang out from the other side of the door, followed by a bright flash of modified memories flooding through the cracks. Soon there was silence, and silence was all Cassius knew for a very long time. Cassius stood as motionlessly as he could muster, but the world outside his window breathed with a life of its own. It was beautiful. He couldn't help but admire the dancing rays of light across the last sterile halls and the way the birds sang in the swaying trees. It all felt real. Part of him itched to step out of his glass box and take a tiny peek outside. Just one moment wouldn't hurt, would it? He quickly forced the temptation back down and kept his eyes forward. No, he was the empty vessel, and in this glass box he shall stay. King Roderick did not spend all those years toiling over his plans just for Cassius to wander outside on a whim. Still, even enshrouded in the dark of night, The world outside was breathtaking. The stars simmered in the velvet black behind the thicket of leaves. It was so unlike the black nothingness that Cassius dwelled in before his birth. That darkness was just nothing, empty, like what he was supposed to be. And yet, out there beyond his window, the wind sighed softly, the moon soared overhead, and the fireflies blinked against the cascading hues of lavender and blue. On some nights, he'd stare out into the darkness outside his window and wonder how such a beautiful world could create something as hollow as him. Cassius soon discovered that, unlike him, the world outside changed. Leaves curled into flashes of yellow and red before falling from branches. The winds grew frigid and glittering flakes of snow fell from the skies to carpet the earth. The crisp winter cold soon bled into his dark storage room, nipping uncomfortably at the flesh beneath his robes. Cassius did not shiver. He was not supposed to move. A part of him welcomed the icy sensation even. It was better than the endless numbness that curled up in his chest. Then he quickly admonished himself. That numbness was supposed to be there. Why couldn't he just stay empty? Cassius's chest hurt. He had suffered no physical injuries. He was sure of it. Why was he feeling like this? The world outside his window grew painful to look at. It was still beautiful, of course. It was. The soft winter snow stood against the lavender sky like a comforting blanket of white. The stars still shone like diamonds. The trees still danced in the wind, and Cassius still stood motionlessly inside his glass box. He no longer peered longingly at the beautiful world in the corner of his eye, instead keeping his gaze forward and blank. He couldn't bear to look at it. Cassius lost count of how many times the world outside changed and breathed. Perhaps this was good. It meant that he was growing empty as Maker intended. This is good. It must be. On some days his traitorous mind wondered if this was all worth it. On some days he wondered if it would be better if the world stopped and he returned to that empty blackness. Life, he discovered, was excruciating. Something new was happening today. Cassius discovered to his great horror. There were loud rattling and banging sounds outside the laboratory hallway. A visitor, perhaps? No, he wouldn't. He never received visitors. A burglar, then? They weren't being particularly discreet. Cassius could hear them swear loudly under their breath as they poked at the wards outside his door. He wondered if he should do something. He could hide or maybe stop them somehow, but that would require moving or even leaving his glass box, and that surely wasn't allowed. Before he could make up his mind, he felt a surge of necrotic magic bash against the wards with all the subtlety of a hammer, and the door flew open. The person outside, a woman, coughed and waved her hand through the cloud of dust left in her wake. Dusty. Silly Roderick didn't stuff my life's work in a random storage room. The nerve. I swear I'm gonna pluck every single tail feather out of his royal ass. A middle-aged bat in a white scarf and round glasses stomped into the room with a scowl. Cassius stood motionless as he poked through the boxes scattered across the room with her maid staff. She seemed absorbed in her task and didn't even notice him until she passed the front of his case. The bat paused. She squinted through the glass for several moments before letting out a startled yelp. Oh, good gods, you're alive. I thought you were a mannequin. Hang on, I'll let you out of there. The bat fumbled with the handle of his case, and the door swung open. For the first time in years, Cassius felt a waft of fresh air against his face. He fought the urge to take in a deep breath. He had been doing such a good job so far he couldn't afford to ruin things now. Strange, the case isn't enchanted or anything. Hello, sir? Can you move? The bat froze again as he lit up his face. Oh. Her hand flew to her mouth as he let out a sticky breath. It looked just like him. So, he used it. Devastation and loss weighed heavy in her voice, mixed together with a fond admiration. The bat looked shaken for a moment before rubbing her eyes furiously and forcing out a warm smile. Hello, it's very nice to meet you. I'm Agatha Stoker. Well, I suppose it's something like your aunt. Actually, no. Call me whatever you're comfortable with. I suppose I've made a terrible first impression of myself. What's your name, dear? Her tone was soft and welcoming as she looked at him with a tenderness that made Cassius' chest hurt. Nobody looked at him like this before. Should he answer her? He wasn't supposed to speak to anyone other than his maker, but she seemed nice. The bat chuckled. There's no need to be shy, dear. I'm an old friend of your father's. We know each other for ages, really. I'm surprised he never mentioned me. His father? Oh, she must mean King Roderick. It made sense. Cassius was supposed to introduce himself as the king's son. After all, father. The word felt foreign in his mind, but it made his insides feel bubbly and pleasant. He hoped his maker wouldn't mind if he called him that. Agatha gingerly reached out and took his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. Cassius's heart leaped into his chest. The touch felt warm and kind. He wasn't sure what to do with this feeling. Is something wrong, dear? Why in the world did your dad stuff you in a glass case in his dusty laboratory? He has so much room in his castle. I hope you had space to run around as a kid, at the very least. I was never a child. He blurted out the words without thinking. Agatha's smile fell at the sound of his monotone voice, replaced quickly with alarm and concern. Oh no, Cassius thought dreadfully. He must have done something wrong already. Never a child? What in the world do you mean? Slow realization and horror crept across the bat's face as her grip around his hand tightened. No. Did he rush the crystal's growth? No. It was designed to birth a child. The effects of her development would be catastrophic. A child? He repeated the words blankly. That didn't sound right. He was supposed to be the vessel, the ark upon which his maker would sail onto the new world. The concern and dread on Agatha's face grew as he grabbed his wrist. To take his pulse and examine him closely, magic radiating from her fingertips. Her shoulders were shaking, and Cassius could feel her racing heartbeat through her palms. Was he concerned for him? Cassius wanted to reach out and assure her that he was fine, that he was always like this, but the words would not come out. The bat let out an angry rasp. You're just a hollowed out shell. The personality suppressed, a foreign magic forcefully injected inside, and the ego whipped out like an unwanted organ. What did he do to you? Cassius did not know how to answer. I'm fine. His monotone voice only seemed to agonize her further. No, you're not. You're not supposed to be like this. This is an abomination. Her voice cracked and tears threatened to well at the edge of her eyes. What was I supposed to be? You were supposed to be a child, a new life brought into this world to be loved and cherished. You were supposed to grow and learn and be free to choose the life you wanted to live. Choose? And your parents. You were supposed to have parents who raised you, and hold you close when you're afraid, and pat your head and tell you everything will be okay. Instead, you were stuffed in a box and stored away like a doll. This isn't right. Cassius's chest twisted painfully as Agatha tightly clung onto him. Her head hung low. This woman was mourning him, mourning the person he could have been. He wanted to tell her that it wasn't so bad. He had a great and wonderful purpose ahead of him. His father was quite proud of him as well. There was no need to cry for him, but the words would not leave his throat. For a brief moment, Cassius cursed the empty cell of his existence. For one tiny sliver of a second, Cassius wanted nothing more but to raise his arms and embrace this grieving woman, if only to give a tiny bit of comfort. But he could not. Instead, he forced his beak open and two raspy, monotone words spelled out. I'm sorry. Agatha raised her head softly. Her gaze narrowed as she searched his face for something he could not name. She let out a bit of defeated breath. Are you even capable of such a thing anymore? Cassius did not know how to answer. Loud Talon footsteps echoed in the hall, snapping the two of them out of their stupor. They looked up to see the dark figure of King Roderick step into the room, studying them closely. He did not look surprised. Agatha. Roderick. Wild venom dripped from her voice as she glared at the older peacock. You told me you were safeguarding my work after that little burglary. Hidden away from safekeeping, you said. And I have kept my promise. It is quite safe. I am not sure what I've done to deserve your ire. Not sure. King Roderick pointing his feathers absent-mindedly as he spoke. Were you anxious about the state of your creation? There was no need to rampage through my wards. You need only ask. He nodded towards Cassius with a glimmer of pride. Magnificent, isn't it? You should be proud. Agatha was silent, but Cassius could feel her grip tighten against his chest. You've done truly marvelous work. The flesh has become everything I required. However, I must say you've put far too much attention to its emotional capacity. Unnecessary baggage. It took me years to remove such frivolities from its core, and I feared I nearly failed. You said you needed an heir that you and Tabitha couldn't sire. Roderick raised his hand dismissively. That was not a lie. It was introduced itself as my son, an unfortunate necessity to avoid suspicion among the people. The king stepped forward with an outstretched hand. I'm glad you come today, Agatha. My dearest friend, I pray that of all people you see my vision for the future of this Roderick world. Surely, after all the years you spent treating my wife, you understand that a cure is not enough. Even when fed with the life force of countless druids, Tabitha's deterioration has only slowed slightly. The same fate awaits us all. And children, why would you condemn them to life, only for decay to take them in time? No. Surely you understand. Roderick pressed forward eagerly with a mad, desperate glint in his eye. Dear Agatha, I pray that you will stand with me. With your brilliance, together we can finally grace the world with the gift of eternity. Your empty doll will also rot with time, as far as I can tell. The peacock barked out a laugh. The flesh, it is nothing. Simply the ark that will carry us through the flood to come. Something in Agatha finally snapped. Nothing? Nothing? You took my life's work, my dream, and defiled it. Ripped it apart only withered apart until only this sorry empty husk remained. This is a spit in the face upon everything I stood for, and now you expect me to join you? Wazit was silent for a moment before letting out a small sigh. He sounded resigned, disappointed. I speak with the utmost sincerity when I say that I consider you my dearest friend. I truly wish to usher in the new world with you by my side. You still don't understand, do you? And I'm beginning to fear you never will. You're a monster, Roger Deluvium. Agatha slammed her magic staff onto the floor with a resounding crack. Tendrils of necrotic magic unfurled from her palms as he glared at the king with boiling fury. I swear, as long as my life still runs through my veins, I will tear apart everything you hold dear, Roderick. Your schemes, your hopes, your very life. This I promise you. Circle of Death. Cassius' last memory of Agatha Stoker was the sight of her venomous gaze before his vision was engulfed by necrotic light. Before death could take them, his father cast scatter with a lazy flick of his wrist, and he suddenly found himself flung out of the laboratory's collapsing walls. Things changed rather quickly after that day. King Roderick quietly ushered him into Castle Deluvium after a large chunk of the 14th laboratory was obliterated. Cassius suddenly had his own bedroom. He had no idea what to do with so much space. The windows were bigger, and he could even step out onto the balcony to see the world below. At first he stood stiffly in the corner of the room, but that frightened off the few servants who came in to clean, much to father's dismay. Afterwards he spent his time walking around, mimicking what he believed people would do in a bedroom, which included profusely cleaning everything within reach. It wasn't very princely behavior, but at least it lessened the need for servants in the first place. And so the years ticked on just like in his glass case. One afternoon, while Cassius rooted himself on the balcony like a statue, his door suddenly swung open, and his father stepped quietly inside. Cassius stiffened as Roderick's stern glare regarded him coldly. Cassius, attend to me, quickly, now. He was immediately at his father's side. The king grabbed him by the chin and gave him a quick once-over. Seems functional. Any changes or concerns to report? A part of Cassius longed to confess that, yes, he was very concerned. Ever since his encounter with Agatha Stoker, the strange breathing pain in his chest refused to go away. His mind constantly raced with frivolous questions he knew he shouldn't ask. Like, would King Roderick be terribly upset if he called him father? Would it be appropriate to thank the king for this wonderful new room? And Cassius couldn't help but remember how the distraught enchanter clung to him that night. The sensation of that reassuringly warm hand still haunted him through each agonizing day. He desperately wanted to ask why father never held him like that. But these were all questions that an empty vessel should not have. So Cassius numbly nodded as a small lie spilled from his monotone voice. Nothing to report, Your Majesty. Good. I have a task for you. Starting today, you will be making sparse appearances to the people of Axia. We must ensure that the people become acclimated to your presence so that the transition of power proceeds without issue. Cassius was horrified. He didn't know how to speak to other people. The knowledge implanted in his mind did nothing to prepare him for such a responsibility. His fear bubbled up his throat with a wave of nausea, but only his usual emotionless voice escaped. Understood, father. King Roderick looked at him sharply. You will address me as Your Majesty. Understood, Your Majesty. The dark peacock's eyes narrowed, but mercifully he decided to move along. You will be accompanied by a guard at all times. Speaking of which, he should be here by now. There was a loud metallic clunk outside before the bedchamber's door swung open once again. This is the white door. This blasted castle is far too large for his own good. A massive bell stomped inside with an annoyed huff, the furniture rattling in his wake. The gruff man visited awkwardly in his high-ranking church armor, as though he was unaccustomed to its weight, which seemed rather strange for a knight commander. After taking far too long to stretch and make himself comfortable, the bear flashed him a mocking smile and bowed. Your Majesty. Well, if it ain't a delight to see your cheerful mug again. And who's this little guy? Roger scowled. I see your time in prison has not tempered your difficult behavior. Oh, you mean the months you spent torturing me in the cell while feeding me weird magic flesh? I vaguely remember a little something else happening too. Oh yes, I almost fucking died. So yeah, forgive me for not being thrilled to be here. King Roger tilted his head, his amber eyes regarded him coldly. Considering you were on death row, I expected you to be grateful for this second chance and for your new gifts as well. You call this a gift? The bear flexed his hand experimentally. Golden embers danced between his fingertips, filling the room with the sterile scent of celestial magic. I could feel it boiling inside my blood at every waking moment. And if I let it run rampant for too long, I was burning myself alive. He spat out a bitter laugh. Bless my ass. The only silver lining is that the church is suddenly scrambling to explain why their beloved creator gave a lowly criminal her favor. His eyes narrowed and a devilish snarl twisted across the bear's face. I suppose I ought to show you the gratitude you deserve. Flame suddenly erupted from the night, wreathing around his claymore like a fiery serpent. In that blur, the knight leaped forward and swung his massive burning blade directly towards the king's head. Halt. The flames immediately evaporated like mist, and the knight dropped to the floor with a heavy thud. He growled and struggled to tear at the dark peacock again, but his limbs remained stubbornly still. Roderick rubbed his temples tiredly before turning towards Cassius. Your guard will be the pale butcher, a Grank Stoneborn, as he is today. He is as unruly as his moniker suggests. The king eyed the struggling bear with a hint of disgust. And you will guard the vessel with your life, and learn to behave properly. Grank let out a pained wheeze as the wounds across his body simmered angrily. The vessel is also equipped with a leash. It can end your life with a single word if necessary. And unlike you, it takes commands rather literally. I do not recommend testing its limits. The king sighed and waved his hand dismissively as he turned to leave the room. Now go, familiarize yourselves with the castle grounds and try not to become a nuisance. The chamber doors slammed shut, and Cassius suddenly found himself alone with the furious knight. He froze, unsure of what to do as the bear continued writhing painfully on the floor while his wounds sealed into his skin. Several moments passed as he listened to the other man's pained rasp. Grank saw him a heated glare. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Sadistic little shit, just like your old man. Cassius blinked blankly. I'm the vessel. I was not made to enjoy things. He tilted his head. Would you like to stand up? What the fuck do you think, smart ass? Cassius thought that the sight of a church knight season on his floor will probably frighten the servants again. Stand and be at ease. Grant sighed in relief as he stumbled onto his feet. Violently. Took a sweet time. Apologies, are you well? Really? What do you think? Cassius blinked again. I do not believe Father would approve. Grant brought out a laugh. Or tormenting little old me? I think he's rather made a sport of it. Of me thinking. The bear looked back. The bear looked taken aback as Cassius began to leave. He paused at the doorway, suddenly a little lost. I am unfamiliar with the castle grounds. You should leave. Grant glared at him testily. And if I don't feel like it, then I will be compelled to issue a command. Your seal of binding will activate, and you will lead me either way. I believe you've made your opinion on pain clear, thus I recommend you attend to your task willingly. The bear sighed as Cassius' monotone voice droned on. With a defeated grumble, he pushed past the peacock through the door. Follow along, then, little princeling. It's a shame your pa didn't give you a personality. Unnecessary. I'm the vessel. The vessel should be empty. Grant glanced at him wearily. Right. Word of advice, kid. Don't say stuff like that around normal folk. You'll scare the shit out of them. Noted. Yes. Cassius had never walked so much in his life. Grant seemed to relish leading him down the longest and most inefficient routes across the castle and watching him struggle to keep up. Exercise is good for your bones, he said cheerfully as Cassius tripped down a long flight of stairs. The prince forced back any hint of emotion as he picked himself up. What if someone saw and reported it to Father? That wouldn't do. As they passed, the servants said curious whispers before bowing deeply. Thankfully, most did not attempt to strike up a conversation. This was entirely ruined by Grant, who made sure to merrily greet each other. Who made sure to merrily greet each and every person they came upon. Afternoon, friends. This here is our dear Prince Cassius. He's making an effort to meet all the servants of the castle, and thank you for your hard work. Ain't that just swell? Cassius forced out a strange smile that made him look rather constipated. The servants nodded politely, their horror torn between the stiff, grimacing prince and the pale butcher marching down the hall with a cheerful grin. Cassius forced out a strange smile that made him look rather constipated. The servants nodded politely, their horror torn between the stiff, grimacing prince and the pale butcher marching down the hall with a cheerful grin. A few of the maids screamed and fled, leaving their braver co-workers to deal with the strange duo. One even stumbled, knocking over a mop bucket and face planting in the carpet. Cassius paused before quietly approaching and offering a hand. Are you well? His monotone voice must have been horrid. The maid stared at his outstretched hand, wide-eyed. Oh, silly me, I beg forgiveness for my fumble, Your Highness. You needn't waste your time with the likes of me. She hastily jumped to her feet before taking his hand. For a moment, Cassius saw his blank, empty stare reflected in the servant's wide eyes and glance. That only seemed to frighten the poor woman further. My humblest apologies, Your Highness. I didn't mean to offend. I did not take offense. He paused. Was that enough for a conversation? It didn't feel like it. Cassius glanced at the puddle of water flowing from the spilled mop bucket. He flicked his hand, sparks of prestidigitation flicking from his fingertips as the mess disappeared, leaving behind a spotless floor. Instead of being pacified as he hoped, the servant suddenly let out a devastated wail. I beg mercy, Your Grace. Explain. Everyone is talking about how all the servants have been sacked from O'Shaughnessy Manor, and all of them replaced by magical constructs. I understand how unnecessary my position is here, but I cannot afford to lose this job. Cassius blinked. Magic is magic is finite and unreliable without direction. You all perform a vital service. There's no reason to replace you. Another maid muscled another maid bustled up to the distraught servant's side and curtsied apologetically. Forgive my friend's ramblings. Her father had recently fallen gravely ill, and she is beside herself with worry. The younger servant sniffed as he struggled to regain her breath. Father was working in the exterior when the luckless famine hit. He made it out alive, but he has been very sick since. Cassius tilted his head thoughtfully. I see. Then we will send a court physician to your father to expedite his recovery. An astonished hush swept throughout the servants in the hall. Even Grant raised an eyebrow in surprise. Did he say something wrong? Cassius bit his tongue as he considered Misty stepping back to the safety of his room upstairs. Thank you for your kind offer, Your Grace, but I can't possibly afford a court physician or a maid's salary. The royal family faces no shortage of coin. You are a servant, a castle diluvium, and will work better if you are not worried for your father. It is only logical. He turned towards Grank with a nod. Sir Grank, you will go to the medical wing tomorrow morning and make the arrangements on my behalf. The bear's eyes twitched as his wounds flashed for a moment. Even so, he forced out a soft chuckle. As you command. Oh my goodness, thank you, my lord. Greatest blessings upon you. I don't know how I could ever repay your kindness. There in the hall, seeing the change, Cassius suddenly found himself subjected to a sea of surprised and grateful smiles. His plummets fluffed up, and he coughed loudly. I did not require thanks. Don't mind him, our dear prince is a bit sigh. He's a sweetheart lad, ain't he? The servant stared wide-eyed as the knight commander tousled the prince's hair with a jovial grin. Is he allowed to do that? One of the maids whispered. Cassius froze. He stood stiffly as the bear continued to smother him with overly friendly pets. He was fairly certain this was supposed to be patronizing. Grant's hands were massive, completely dwarfing the peacock's head as he was being entirely too rough. But they were warm, affectionate even. Cassius felt the pain in his chest worsen with each touch, and his eyes suddenly felt wet. Oh my, Your Highness, are you all right? I'm functional. For the first time, the prince's voice cracked, breaking through his monotone drawl. Grant looked taken aback. Oh, perhaps I teased too much. My apologies, Your Grace. I do not require apologies. We should continue our task. Cassius fled down the hall before anyone could utter a word. Greg hastily waved the bewildered servants goodbye before chasing after him. As soon as they found themselves in a secluded hallway, Cassius turned towards the knight sharply. You will not speak about behavior during that exchange to King Roderick for any reason. Grank winced as wounds across his flesh lit up like blue embers. Yes, you could have just asked. Hell would freeze over before I snitched to that royal bastard. I see. My apologies. The bear rubbed his face as he shot the prince a puzzled look. What a strange little surprise you turned out to be. The old man usually haunts the castle like a depressing little storm cloud. Never expected you to be so. He waved his hand vaguely. All right. Father has described me as adequate. The bear grimaced. Yikes, I forgot you had to deal with fucking Roderick as your dad. Maybe we started off on the wrong foot. Sorry if I was a bit unfair. I did not require apologies. Okay, he keeps saying that, but Grank scratched his head as he stared at the younger peacock curiously. Mind if I ask you a stupid question? You may. How do I put this? Are you like alive? When we first met, you were so stiff and blank that I assumed you were a weird magic mannequin. Are you actually Roderick's kid? King Roderick, Diluvium, is my maker, yes. A very noble thing to say about your dad. I was made to be the vessel, the ark upon which he will sail into the new world. Right, okay, maybe I should be more specific. Grant scratched his head awkwardly. What I really need to know is, are you real? Like, is there a real person in there with thoughts and feelings, or are you just a jumble of rules and commands that old Roderick put into you? A cold shiver crawled up Cassius' spine. He stood silently unsure of what to say. It's okay if you don't want to answer. I was made to be an empty vessel. Cassius' blood pounded in his ears as he tried to steady his breath. An empty vessel should not have thoughts or feelings. An empty vessel will not be considered alive. Instead of being satisfied, Grank's frown only deepened. Sure, that's what you're supposed to be, but no kid actually ends up exactly the way their parents want, right? So what are you really? Instead of being satisfied, Grank's frown only deepened. Sure, that's what you're supposed to be, but no kid actually ends up exactly the way their parents want, right? So, what are you, really? Cassius's heart leaped to his throat, and he glanced up in surprise. His monotone voice cracked once again as panic bled through. What do you mean? I mean, if you were empty, you wouldn't have told me to keep a secret from your old man, would you? That strikes me as something a kid would do. I was never a child. Grank's eyebrows shot up as he let out a breathy sigh. Oh, you poor kid. I am not a child. Cassius covered his mouth. I guess he was supposed to raise his voice. He wasn't supposed to sound terrified either. Please don't tell father. He mustn't know that I'm. Grank winced through the burning pain of his seals and knelt down, placing a steady hand on the panicking prince's shoulder. Shh. It's all right, lad. You're all right. Cassius was shaking his throat, burned, and his heart refused to stop hammering against his chest. He stumbled forward, leaning onto the knight's grip as the world began to spin. No, it's not. I'm not alright. It's never been alright. Breathe, lad. Just focusing on breathing. I'm not empty, but why can't I just be empty? Why do I keep feeling this? Why do I keep feeling like this? But father will be furious if he finds out I'm defective. Both of Grank's hands were on the peacock's shoulders as he trembled like a leaf in a storm, sobs threatening to spill out with every breath. Shh, you're not defective, lad. Just listen to me. The bear's voice was low and gentle as he brushed Cassius's hair smoothly. Somehow it only made the pain in his chest worse. These things that you're feeling right now, they're not wrong. It just means you're real. You're alive. But I'm not supposed to be. That doesn't matter. Look at me. I'm supposed to be the pale butcher or a knight commander or the creator's special little guy. Nobody ends up the way they're supposed to be. That's just life. The bear chuckled softly. You're alive, despite everything. A miracle, really. A miracle? How can you say that? Father didn't make me for this. Shh. Gray cradled the weeping boy and whispered softly. His embrace was warm, tender, and made Cassius feel like he'd shattered to pieces back there, where you offered to help that poor servant with her sick father. That was you, not your bastard of a father. You made the world a kinder place just by being yourself instead of an empty cell. You're a good kid. We could always use more of those. That servant, Cassius fell silent. Tell me, are children supposed to care for their fathers, like that servant did? Grank hummed thoughtfully. It depends on the father, I suppose. I assume that servant had a good one, judging by how much she worried for him. Father has done much for me as well. He told for years to bring me into being. He gave me this wonderful room in the castle. He was proud of me when we first spoke. Oh, lad. Cassius looked up sharply, stepping back from the bear's embrace. He had such high hopes for me. I would be letting him down if I gave up now. If I just try harder, I can't give up now. I can't do that to him. Look here. Silence. The knight winced as his jaws forcibly snapped shut. We will continue our task. You will not mention this conversation to anyone. You will aid me in fulfilling my purpose. Are we understood? The sealed binding flashed across the bear's skin with a sickening hiss. Gray's body suddenly seized. His limbs twitched as he pulled himself up onto his feet as though pulled along by invisible strings. Cassius watched in revulsion as the bear's expression fell into a blank, exquisite stare. All the warmth and kindness from earlier extinguished. Grank looked empty, like he was supposed to be. Cassius wanted to retch. As you command. Sir Grank, are you right? I am your loyal servant. The bear nodded stiffly and began marching down the hallway to continue their tour of the castle. The pain in Cassius' chest dug into him like 1,000 tiny daggers. It hurt worse than being empty, worse than the fear of disappointing his father. In that moment, Cassius knew he was the worst person in the world. Cole and Cassius both recoiled with a pained gasp. The arcane connection between them together snapped like a firework, sending both of them tumbling backwards onto the ruined laboratory floor. Cole laid on the ground for several long moments. He stared up at the ceiling in silence, letting the torrent of memories slowly sink in. He was the hyena glanced up to see the prince staring at him wide-eyed. His expression was a storm of horror and fascination, and maybe a twinge of envy as well. You're real. The prince spoke with dazed wonder in his voice. You were born and raised. You had... Cassius swallowed nervously. Is that what fathers are supposed to be like? I was born from a moment of insecurity. I was a rash decision. Cole sat up numbly. I was born, and then Papa immediately regretted it. But you were loved, and they cared for you. At least, I assume that's what traditional parenting looks like. Cole let out a bitter, humorless laugh. And I still somehow became a fuck-up. What a surprise. The hyena looked up and shot the prince a wistful smile. It looks like you drew the short straw, though. Got stuck in a box for most of your life, you still managed to become someone with a conscience. Are you doing all right, man? No. Are you? Nah, despite everything, the two exchanged a small chuckle. What strange siblings we make. Cassius saw him a curious look. What will you do now? Try not to think about it for a while. Cole hopped onto his feet and stared around the broken laboratory halls. I still need to help Autumn figure out all this shit. And I still need to apologize to Hamish for everything. And maybe now that the cat's out of the bag, my dads can stop pretending now. Cole smiled humorously. That's a problem for future me, though. Right now I'm just gonna tear through this lab, look for my friends, and maybe find out whatever your city dad is hiding. Cole fell quiet. What about you? Are you going to stop me? Cassius stared at the hyena for a long time, his face torn. Finally, he let out a deep, tired sigh. No. You're real, alive. What right do I have to stop you? Cole's eyes widened as arcane mist began enveloping the prince's body. He was forward, arms outstretched. Wait. Before he could stop him, Cassius fled in a burst of smoke, leaving Cole alone in the cold laboratory. Cassius stepped into the overcast light outside of the 14th laboratory, his mind racing and his chest numb. He wasn't sure what he expected to find when he delved into Hyena's memory, but it wasn't this. He wasn't even sure if it answered any of his questions. His mind was in too much of a disarray to think straight. But through all the turmoil, one memory stuck out to him. Cassius's mind wandered to the thought of a young, crying boy curled up in a cold corner of the room. The boy was devastated because he could not live up to what he believed he needed to be, and yet the boy's father sat down next to him with a smile and muttered quiet assurances. There was the sensation of a warm hand quietly patting his head as a low voice whispered that everything would be all right. Cassius attempted to imagine King Roswell doing the same for him, and his chest clenched uncomfortably. Father was good to him for the most part, he thought, but he was nothing like that. Oh, good. I figured you turned up here. Cassius jumped in surprise. Sir Grank, what are you doing here? The knight chuckled softly as he marched down the cobblestone steps in the distance. He raised an eyebrow at the massive smoking crater where the 14 laboratory gates used to be. I received some strange reports that our royal prince was seen chased across town by a scantily clad hyena. And then somebody set off a bunch of wards at a forbidden facility. Thought I should come make sure you were alright. I'm fine, thank you. Grank grinned, amused. I assumed that was your first time tussling with someone your age. Any devastating injuries I ought to be worried about? No, none. We didn't fight, really. Thought I suppose I fell and bruised my knee. Never gotten bruised before. Ha! Congratulations on your first battle scar. I hope you don't mind if I check it, just to be safe. I assume you wizards don't have the best healing practices. Cassius's plummets fluffed up in embarrassment, but he showed the knight whose bruised leg were a nod. The bear kneeled down and let out a snore. If I were a proper medic like Sir Theomore, this is where I hand out candy to pacify a crying kid. I'm not a child, Sir Grank. And what I'm saying that is, I'm sure you're owed a few free tantrums here and there. Soft and golden embers danced from the paladin's fingers like faint candles. The warmth enveloped Cassius's knee like a hot bath. The prince blinked and flexed his leg, the pain completely gone. Thank you, sir. Think nothing of it. Now let's get you back home while your terrifying hyena pursuer is busy, shall we? Cassius nodded quietly as Grank led him down the cobblestone path away from the laboratory. He stared at the paladin's broad back, his mind wandering. Sir Grank, may I ask you a question? You needn't answer if you do not wish to. Grank raised an eyebrow and shrugged. Ask away, lad. Why do you always do this? The frivolous things, I mean. You're bound to protect me, yes, but you never needed to offer me tea or heal my minor escapes. Why do you always go out of your way to help me? The bear's eyes softened. Because I want to. But why? Cassius hung his head low. I was under the impression that you hated me. Grank let out a soft breath. Hey, you. Whatever for, lad. For everything. You're stuck with me. I constantly take away your will, and not to mention all the things my father has done to you. Grank hummed thoughtfully. I was a little frustrated in the beginning, yes, but I never hated you. You and I, we are just little cogs in the grand machine we have no control over. And you have been afforded very little kindness in your life. I am grateful for the opportunity to even that balance. Cassius stared at the night incredulously. His chest continued to gnaw at his insides, and a soft look on Grank's face was painful to look at. Cassius hung his head low once more. Thank you. It hurt. He was just an accident that sprung to life in the midst of father's plans. He had done nothing to deserve such kindness from the knight, and yet Grank had stayed by his side throughout all these years, and likely the years to come. A creeping panic bled through his mind as Cassius thought about the task ahead, his purpose. A vast ocean of duty laid ahead of him, and the crushing weight of it all terrified him to no end. Cassius glanced up at Grank's sympathetic smile, and the pain in his chest sank deeper like a knife. I know I am in no position to ask for such a thing, but may I request a favor? A selfish one. You needn't humor me, only if you want to. What would you like, lad? Cassius' gaze stayed fixed to the ground, unable to meet the knight's eyes. He suddenly felt silly and pathetic for even thinking of this. But he had already asked. It would be even more pathetic to back out now. He sucked in a short breath. Can you pat me on the head and tell me everything will be okay? There was a long, incredulous pause. Good gods, he must sound so stupid right now. Grank was probably flabbergasted by the sheer absurdity of it all. Cassius was about to splutter an apology for wasting the knight's time when Grank suddenly took a step forward. It was gentle, warm. The knight's fingers ruffled his hair affectionately as he whispered quiet words of comfort to the young prince. There, lad. Everything's going to be okay. You've been so brave and fought for so long, and I'm proud of you, lad. Something inside Cassius broke. The pain inside his chest cracked open like bones, and tears began flooding down his face like an unending river. He couldn't stop. It was pathetic, bawling and weeping into the night's arms like a child, his shoulders trembling like a leaf in the wind, and yet Great held him close and continued fondly tussling his hair while whispering, "It's all right, lad. Just let it all out. It's all right." It only made Cassius weep even more. Normal people didn't break into pieces when met with the slightest tenderness, he thought. Somehow, being held and cared for felt like the very proof that he had been ruined. Author's note: the following sections is not yet complete. Please return in a future update. To be continued. Author's note: hello, I'm Cyril Core, artist and writer for this visual novel. Thank you for playing Temptations Ballad. I hope you liked it so far. If you're feeling generous and would like to help create me more updates of this visual novel, please feel free to support me on Patreon. It really helps me out as an artist writer and allows me to continue creating content for this visual novel for free. Patreon supporters also receive new updates a month in advance. Click here on my Patreon. My social medias include Twitter and Furor and Fur Affinity. If you're interested in my other works, try out my other gay furry visual novel, Repeat. Thanks again for playing. Alright, so that was a pretty long update. So we learned a lot in this new update. The first half of this update was about Cole and his fathers, and that basically they used this invention of Agatha to have Cole, for Cole for Cole to be, to have birth to Cole, basically. I mean, both Hamish and Marrow, both Marrow and Hamish merged both of their blood together in the crystal, and they were able to give birth to Cole. Well, not really like give birth, but whatever. They were able to have Cole, their son. And Hamish wondered if Marrow really wanted a son, or if he just wanted a son to get back at his father. So we know now that Marrow is from the Sanity family, and I might have to go back and look, but I don't know if the father of Calder is I might have to go back and look at that and see who he's related to in the O'Shaughnessy family, but he is part of that family. But anyway, so Marrow is part of an elite family, the O'Shaughnessy's, and apparently he didn't want to live that kind of life anymore. He wanted to live a simpler life, away from the stress of it all. Like, maybe not like simpler life, but like a life that he wanted. So he became a mercenary and started his own guild. So Hamish, he thought that Marrow's decision to have a child was too hasty, that they were not completely ready yet to have a child, but they decided to anyway. I think once Marrow really wanted to have a son, that's when Hamish decided to agree to Marrow's desire to have a son, even though he still believed that it was still kind of rash for them to have a son so soon. When they weren't completely ready yet to take on the responsibility of taking care of a child. So we get to understand more about Agatha's hatred for his former friend, or for her former friend, King Roderick, and she believed that Roderick defiled her creation, and her creation is Cassius, the prince, because instead of having a child, instead of King Roderick having a child to raise and to prepare for the throne, just going to childhood and learning about the world, he decided to have him basically as a adult or a teenager, I guess, or a near adult. Basically, at least that's what appeared to me. At least that's what appeared to me. Like, we didn't see him as a child, and he spent many years in this glass vase. Not, instead of King Roderick interacting with him and getting him to, live life, he just basically just kept the prince in this glass vase like he's some kind of object, because basically that's what King Roderick really only thought of Cassius as some object for him to use for his own purposes. He didn't treat Cassius like an actual person or a child. He just treated him like an object, and Cassius stayed in that room, in that vase for so many years. And Cassius wanted to step outside the vase and see the world, but he decided not to because he strongly believed that it was his purpose to do what King Roderick told him to do, and that it wasn't his place to have any emotions or any wants or desires. The only desires were to obey King Roderick. So, clearly he wasn't an emotionless type of person or some kind of robot, because he had desires too. He wanted to look at the world and see what was outside, but he decided to put his personal wants, he tried to control his desires and instead focus on what King Roderick wanted him to do. So he believed that basically he was like a robot, basically. He wasn't supposed to have any feelings or any wants. And when he gets introduced to the Grank, his bodyguard and knight, he reinforces that belief when Grank tries to talk to him more, get to know him. And we also get to see how Grank was in the beginning. So obviously he was a relatively new commander, and he had a very he wasn't like the calm professional type of guy we got to see him. He was more this brass and rebellious type of guy who clearly didn't like the situation he was in. He's more foul mouth and just didn't want to be in the situation he was in. But anyway, so he got even though he kind of got frustrated with being around Prince Cassius, I think once he got to see more of Cassius and his strong belief that he should not have any emotions and that he's just supposed to obey King Roderick, that's when Grant got really concerned about Cassius, because he doesn't show any emotion or any feelings. He's just basically just somebody devoid of emotion and wants. Just so and when Cassius decided to let one of the castle servants spend time with their father or help them with their father, that's when Grant saw the more compassionate side of Prince Cassius, something that his father, King Roderick, lacked. So we got to see a major difference between Cassius and his father, the king. The father is cold and ruthless and only seems to care about his motives, while Cassius is more compassionate deep down and just wants to do things that are right. Do things that are correct. So, we got to see King Roderick's sprite for the first time and how he is as a person, just kind of shitty. And he's very cold to Cassius at the beginning. But it seems as though he became more satisfied with Cassius, because Cassius decided to be what his father wanted him to be. And that made King Roderick proud, because his son Cassius did whatever he told him to do. Alright, so both Cassius and Cole, they looked at each other's minds, and after they learned more about each other, they understood each other more, and Cassius was sympathetic towards Cole because he felt that Cole was real. He was more real than he was, because he was a child. He did get to live. He did get to live. He did get to have two loving kids. He did get to live. Can't even talk right now. But anyway, Cassius felt that Cole was real because, in my view, because Cole had two loving parents. They actually had a childhood, while he didn't have any of that. He had a cold wizard father. He just put him in a glass vase and he just stood there. He just stayed there in some room like some random object for years. And at the end, once Cassius let all his feelings out towards Grank, that's when Grank basically just let Cassius let all his feelings out towards him, and essentially, Grank was more of a father than King Roderick was. Because he listens to Cassius, and he lets Cassius, just explain everything, and just he just lets Cassius be himself, and let him know about what he's thinking. So all right, I'm think I'll stop because it's getting really long. So yeah, I enjoyed this update. We got to learn more about Cole and his fathers, and the Prince Cassius, his dad, and how he met Grank for the first time and everything. In the way his life was. So we learned a lot of new stuff in this new update. So thank you all very much for watching. Goodbye.